The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with fear. Ambassador Velketh could see it in the eyes of every representative. He could smell it in the air. 47 species had sent their leaders to this meeting, and all of them were afraid. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a map of the galaxy. Red marks covered nearly a quarter of it. Each red mark was a world that had fallen to the Kreth dominion. "They have taken the Villani system," said Councillor Morath, his old voice heavy with grief. 12 billion souls, gone in a single day. The chamber was silent. No one knew what to say. The Kreth were winning the war, and everyone knew it. Velketh stood at his place among the Solarian delegation. His people were peaceful traders. They had no great warships. They had no powerful weapons. Like most species in the Council, they had relied on diplomacy and cooperation for thousands of years. War was something they read about in history books, but the Kreth did not believe in diplomacy. They believed in conquest. High Warlord Thexarn had sent his message 3 days ago. His face had filled every screen in the council chamber. His scales were black as space, and his eyes burned with cold fire. He had given them 1 galactic cycle to surrender, 1 galactic cycle to give up everything they had built. "Our combined fleet is not enough," said Admiral Kress of the Turani Republic. His forearms were crossed over his chest, and his face showed deep worry. "We have 700 warships. The Kreth have 3,000. The mathematics is simple. We cannot win. Then we must negotiate," said Representative Eula of the Mindari Collective. Her voice was soft and musical, but there was no hope in it. "Perhaps if we offer them tribute, resources, territory." "The Kreth do not want tribute," said Councillor Morath. "They want slaves. They want to harvest our populations for their labor camps. They want to break us and use us until there is nothing left." The chamber fell into silence again. Velketh looked around at the faces of the galaxy's leaders. These were wise beings, ancient beings. Their civilizations had existed for millions of years. They had solved countless problems through reason and cooperation, but they had never faced anything like the Kreth. A young voice broke the silence. "There is another option." Everyone turned to look. Junior diplomat Sela Wren stood at the back of the Solarian delegation. She was young by their standards, barely 200 years old. Her scales were bright blue, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. "Speak," said Councillor Morath. "In times like these, we must hear all ideas." Sela Wren stepped forward. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. "We could contact the humans." The reaction was immediate. Gasps filled the chamber. Several representatives made religious gestures of protection. Ambassador Velketh felt his blood turn cold. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice harder than he intended. "The quarantine exists for a reason." "What quarantine?" asked Representative Eula. The Mindari were a young species. They had joined the Council only 500 years ago. "I have heard whispers about the Sol system, but no one will explain." Councillor Morath closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were filled with old pain. 300 years ago, we discovered a small planet in a distant arm of the galaxy. It was a Class 7 death world. The gravity was crushing, the atmosphere was corrosive, the radiation from its star was deadly, and yet, somehow, life had evolved there. He waved his hand, and the holographic display changed. It showed a small blue and green world, spinning slowly in the darkness. We called it Earth, and we found that it had produced intelligent life, a species called humans. The display changed again. It showed creatures that looked almost ordinary. 2 arms, 2 legs, flat faces with small eyes. They did not look dangerous. "We were curious," Morath continued. "We sent observers. We studied them from orbit, and what we learned terrified us." He gestured, and the display began showing images. Velketh had seen them before, but they still made his stomach turn. Humans fighting wars that lasted for decades. Humans building weapons that could crack the surface of their own planet. Humans hunting creatures 10 times their size for sport. Humans surviving in deserts, in frozen wastelands, in jungles filled with poison. Humans pushing their bodies beyond all limits, running until their feet bled, fighting until their bones broke. "They are not just predators," Morath said quietly. "They are the ultimate predators. Their world tried to kill them every day of their evolution, and they conquered it. They do not give up. They do not surrender. They do not stop. But surely they could help us," Ren said. If they are so powerful, let me tell you about the first contact incident. Velketh interrupted. He stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. 200 years ago, a human colony ship left their home system. They were farmers, families, children. They were looking for a new world to settle. The chamber was completely silent. A group of pirates attacked them near the Corvin Nebula. The pirates wanted their supplies. A simple robbery. Velketh paused. The humans did not surrender their supplies. They fought back with mining equipment and improvised weapons. The pirates fled. That does not sound so terrible, Eula said. The pirates fled, Velketh repeated. But the humans did not stop there. They pursued them. Across 3 star systems. For 6 months, these farmers, these families, hunted the pirates across the galaxy. When they finally caught them, they did not capture them. They did not hand them over to authorities. His voice dropped to a whisper. They destroyed every pirate ship. They boarded the command vessel and killed everyone aboard. Then they cut off the captain's head and left his body floating in orbit around a populated world. As a message, the chamber was frozen in horror. They were farmers, Velketh said. Farmers with children. And they spent 6 months hunting criminals across the stars because those criminals had the audacity to threaten their families. This is what humans do when they are angry. This is what humans do when they feel threatened. He turned to Ren, and his eyes were hard. Now imagine what they would do in a real war. Imagine human soldiers, human generals, human weapons. They would not just defeat the Kreth. They would burn the Kreth from existence, and then they would turn those eyes on the rest of us. They would see our weakness, our fear, and they would wonder why they should let such weak creatures control the galaxy. Ren lowered her eyes. I understand, Ambassador. Counselor Morath raised his hand. We will now vote. The question is simple. Should we break the quarantine and contact Earth for assistance? One by one, the votes came in. Every single representative voted no. The motion fails, Morath announced. The quarantine will remain. Under no circumstances will Earth be informed of this war. We will find another way. But as the representatives filed out of the chamber, Velketh saw the truth in their eyes. There was no other way. The Kreth would come, and the council would fall. He looked at the holographic display one last time. The little blue planet was still spinning in the darkness, surrounded by warning markers and quarantine beacons. Somewhere on that world, billions of humans lived their lives, completely unaware of the war that was consuming the galaxy, completely unaware of how much the universe feared them. Velketh hoped it would stay that way, because if the humans ever learned the truth, nothing would ever be the same. He turned off the display and walked out of the chamber, carrying the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The Kreth Dominion did not wait. Within days of the Council's vote, High Warlord Texarn launched his full assault. His black warships spread across the galaxy like a plague, bringing death to every world they touched. The Torani Republic was the first to fall. Their 7 colony worlds burned in a single week. Admiral Kress died on the bridge of his flagship, fighting to the last moment. His final transmission was a warning to the other species. Run while you can. But there was nowhere to run. The Mindari Collective tried to negotiate. They sent diplomats with gifts and promises of cooperation. The Kreth listened politely. Then they killed the diplomats and invaded anyway. Representative Eula watched from a refugee ship as her homeworld was glassed from orbit. 12 billion of her people died in the fire. The Solarian trade routes collapsed. The Vorathi mining colonies went silent. The ancient libraries of the Kethar Dominion, holding knowledge gathered over 20 million years, were reduced to ash. In the council chamber, the holographic map showed more red marks every day. Half the galaxy was gone. The other half was dying. Ambassador Velketh stopped sleeping. He spent his nights watching reports from the front lines, seeing the same terrible images over and over. Cities burning, ships exploding, refugees screaming, as Kreth soldiers dragged them to slave transports. The galaxy was ending, and there was nothing he could do. Far from the war, on the edge of known space, a small Kreth scout vessel named the Fury of Conquest was running for its life. Lieutenant Drexel stood on the damaged bridge, watching warning lights flash red across every console. The battle had been a disaster. The Council forces had laid a trap, and the Fury had barely escaped. Navigation is offline, reported his second officer. We are flying blind. Pick a direction and go, Drexel ordered. Anywhere is better than here. The ship jumped into hyperspace. The engines screamed with the effort, damaged and bleeding power. Drexel knew they would not survive another jump. They needed to find a place to land and make repairs. When they dropped out of hyperspace, Drexel did not recognize the stars. The navigation computer was dead. They had no idea where they were. "Sir," said his sensor officer, her voice strange, "I am detecting a massive concentration of artificial satellites. Thousands of them, all broadcasting the same message." "What message?" The officer's scales went pale. "Warning. Quarantine zone. Do not approach. By order of the Galactic Council." Drexel felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories about the quarantine zone. Every Kreth soldier had. It was where the Council kept their monster locked away, their secret weapon that they were too afraid to use. "Show me," he said. The main screen flickered to life. It showed a small star system with 8 planets. The third planet from the star was blue and green, wrapped in white clouds. It looked peaceful, beautiful, even. "That is the human homeworld," the sensor officer whispered. "Earth." Before Drexel could respond, the ship shuddered violently. A console exploded, showering the bridge with sparks. The engine warning turned from red to black. "We are going down," the pilot shouted. "I have no control." The fury of conquest fell toward the edge of the system, tumbling end over end. Drexel grabbed his console and held on as the ship broke apart around him. The last thing he did before the darkness took him was activate the emergency beacon. On Earth, Admiral Helena Vance was having her morning coffee when the alert came in. She was a tall woman with gray hair and hard eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded the United Terran Navy for 15 years, and in all that time, she had never received an alert like this one. "Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the system," her aide reported. "It appears to have crashed on an asteroid near the quarantine perimeter." Vance set down her coffee. "Show me." The command center of Luna Base came alive with activity. Holographic displays showed the trajectory of the crashed vessel. It was small, probably a scout ship. The design was nothing Vance had ever seen, but she knew what it was. Everyone on Earth knew. For decades, humanity had been aware that they were not alone. They had found the ancient satellites that surrounded their system, broadcasting their endless warnings. They had captured some of them and studied them. Learning to decode the alien language, they had discovered the truth. The galaxy was full of life, and all of it was afraid of Earth. The discovery had changed everything. Humanity had united like never before, putting aside old conflicts to prepare for the day when the universe would finally make contact. They had built ships, they had built weapons, they had trained soldiers, and they had waited. "Send a recovery team," Vance ordered. "I want that ship and everything in it brought to Luna Base." The recovery team found the fury of conquest in pieces. Most of the crew was dead, but they found one survivor, Lieutenant Drexel, barely alive in an emergency pod. They brought him to the medical bay on Luna Base. The doctors worked for hours, trying to understand his alien biology. When he finally woke, Admiral Vance was waiting. "You are human," Drexel said, his voice weak and filled with fear. "The monsters of Earth. We prefer the term humans," Vance replied calmly. "But yes. Welcome to our system. Now tell me who you are and why you are here." Drexel was too weak to resist. He told her everything. The war, the Kreth Dominion, the Council's desperate last stand, the billions who had already died. Vance listened without expression. When he finished, she asked one question. "Why did your people attack the Council?" Drexel looked at her with confusion. "Because we are strong, and they are weak. The strong take from the weak. This is the natural order." Vance nodded slowly. Then she stood up and walked to the door. "Wait," Drexel called. "What are you going to do?" She stopped, but did not turn around. "I am going to make a call." Drexel watched her go, and a terrible realization crept into his mind. He had led the humans to the war. He had shown them that the galaxy was full of weak species being destroyed by the strong. With his last strength, he reached for his communicator. He had to warn High Warlord Thexarn. He had to tell him what he had done. His final message was short. "The humans know about the war. They are coming. May the gods have mercy on us all." In the council chamber, Ambassador Velketh received the intercepted transmission. He read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. But the words were clear. The quarantine was broken. Earth knew about the war. He collapsed into his chair, his hands shaking. Around him, other council members were reading the same message. Some were crying, some were praying, some were simply staring into space, their minds unable to process what was happening. Councillor Morath spoke first, his ancient voice barely a whisper. "We tried so hard to keep them out," he said. "We built our quarantine. We hid our war. We did everything we could to protect the galaxy from them." He looked up at the holographic display, at the little blue planet that was no longer hidden. "And now they are coming. Not because we asked them to, not because we wanted them to, but because someone was foolish enough to show them that there was a fight worth joining." Velketh found his voice. "What do we do now?" Morath shook his head slowly. "We pray. We pray that when the humans are done with the Kreth, they decide to stop. Because if they do not, there is nothing in this galaxy that can stop them." The chamber fell silent, and the weight of doom settled over them all. High Warlord Thexarn received the message from Lieutenant Drexel while he sat on his throne aboard the Dominion flagship. The massive ship, called the Eternal Conquest, was the largest warship ever built. It had crushed 100 worlds and broken 1,000 armies. Thexarn read the message and laughed. "The humans," he said to his assembled generals. "The legendary monsters of Earth. Finally, we will see if the stories are true." "My lord," said General Krathos, his most trusted commander, "perhaps we should be cautious. The Council's quarantine has held for 300 years. They must have had good reason." "The Council are cowards," Thexarn replied. "They fear everything. They hid from war for 1,000,000 years while we built an empire. Whatever these humans are, they cannot be worse than the armies we have already destroyed." He stood up from his throne, his black scales gleaming in the dim light. "Send a battle group to the Sol system. 15 warships should be more than enough. Capture some humans alive. I want to study them, learn their weaknesses. Then we will add Earth to our empire." The battle group departed within the hour. 15 of the Kreth's finest warships, commanded by Captain Vex Nar, one of the Dominion's most decorated officers. He had conquered 12 worlds and never lost a battle. The journey to Sol took 3 days. When the Kreth fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, Captain Vex Nar studied the human defenses with contempt. "Is this all they have?" he asked. "A few dozen ships? Orbital stations? This will be easier than I thought." His sensor officer reported. "They are hailing us, Captain. Put it through." Admiral Helena Vance appeared on the screen. She was sitting in a simple chair, wearing a plain uniform. She did not look afraid. "Unknown vessels," she said calmly. "You have entered Terran space without authorization. You have 30 seconds to withdraw." Captain Vex Nar laughed out loud. His crew joined him. The idea that this small, soft creature was threatening them was the funniest thing he had heard in years. "Little human," he replied, still chuckling. "I am Captain Vex Nar of the Kreth Dominion. We have conquered half the galaxy. We have destroyed fleets 100 times the size of yours. You will surrender immediately, or we will take what we want by force." Vance did not react. Her expression remained perfectly calm. 20 seconds, she said. Vex Nar stopped laughing. There was something in her voice that made him uncomfortable. Not fear. Something else. Something cold. "You are making a mistake," he said. "We will burn your cities and enslave your people. We will." 10 seconds. "Enough." Vex Nar slammed his fist on his console. "All ships, advance, destroy their fleet, and capture survivors." The Kreth warships surged forward, their weapons charging. Captain Vex Nar watched the human ships on his display, expecting them to flee or surrender. They did neither. Instead, they attacked. The first Kreth ship died in less than a second. A human weapon, a simple metal slug accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through its shields like they did not exist. The ship exploded in a ball of fire. "What?" Vex Nar started to say. The second ship died. Then the third. Then the fourth. The humans were not fighting like any species the Kreth had encountered. They were not careful. They were not defensive. They attacked with everything they had, closing to point-blank range, firing weapons that should have been too primitive to penetrate Kreth armor. But the weapons worked. They worked terribly well. "Return fire!" Vex Nar screamed. "Return fire!" His ships tried. Their energy beams found their targets, scoring hits on the human vessels. But the humans did not stop. Ships with holes in their hulls kept fighting. Ships with engines on fire kept advancing. Ships that should have been dead kept killing. A human destroyer, its entire front section destroyed, rammed directly into a Kreth cruiser. The collision destroyed both ships instantly, but just before impact, Vexnar heard something on the open communication channel. The human crew was laughing. "They are insane," his sensor officer whispered. "They are completely insane." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 13 Kreth warships were destroyed. Only 2 escaped, their engines damaged, their crews broken. Captain Vexnar was not among the survivors. His flagship was boarded by human Marines in the final minutes of the battle. The Marines fought through his crew with weapons and fists and teeth. When they reached the bridge, Vexnar tried to surrender. The Marine commander, a young woman with blood on her face and fire in her eyes, looked at him with an expression he did not understand. "We do not accept surrender from slavers," she said. Those were the last words Captain Vexnar ever heard. The 2 surviving Kreth ships limped back to the Dominion with their terrible report. The crews were changed forever. They spoke of humans who smiled while they died, who kept fighting after taking wounds that would kill any other species, who seemed to enjoy the violence in a way that was not natural. "They are not soldiers," one survivor said, his eyes empty and distant. "They are predators. We were not fighting a war. We were being hunted." High Warlord Thexarn listened to the reports in silence. For the first time in his long military career, he felt something he had never felt before. It was a cold sensation in his stomach, a tightness in his chest. He did not have a word for it. The Kreth language had no word for fear. On Earth, Admiral Vance stood in the command center, studying the data recovered from the captured Kreth ships. The information was extensive. Battle plans, fleet positions, lists of conquered worlds and enslaved populations, and something else. Records of the species that had been destroyed. Images of burning cities and crying children. Videos of families being separated, of elders being executed, of entire civilizations being erased from existence. Vance watched it all with a face of stone. But her hands were shaking. "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "what do we do now?" Vance turned off the display. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of innocent beings were suffering, dying, begging for help that would never come. "Call the United Terran Council," she said. "Emergency session. Tell them to clear their schedules." "What should I tell them it is about?" Vance turned back to her aide. Her eyes were hard, but there was something else in them too. Something that looked almost like hunger. "Tell them we just found out there is a war happening out there. And tell them I am recommending that we join it." The United Terran Council met that night. They reviewed the evidence. They saw the images. They heard the reports. The vote was unanimous. 300 ships of the United Terran Navy departed Earth within the week. They carried 50,000 Marines, 1,000,000 tons of weapons, and 300 years of frustration. For 3 centuries, humanity had watched the stars and wondered why no one would talk to them. Now they knew the answer. The galaxy was afraid of them. It was time to show the galaxy why. Admiral Vance stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UTN Vengeance, as the fleet entered hyperspace. She thought about the slavers they were about to face. She thought about the innocent people waiting to be rescued. She thought about the future they were about to create. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. "All ships," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Vance. We are going to war. Our enemy is evil. Our cause is just. And we are humanity." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Let us show the galaxy what that means." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying death to those who deserved it and hope to those who needed it. The universe would never be the same. The Galactic Council learned of the human fleet before it reached the war zone. Their sensors tracked the 300 ships moving through hyperspace at speeds that should have been impossible. The fleet was not hiding. It was not sneaking. It was coming straight toward the battle lines like a hammer aimed at a nail. Ambassador Velketh called an emergency session. The chamber was fuller than it had been in weeks. Even species that had lost their homeworld sent representatives, desperate to hear any news that might save what remained of their people. "The humans have mobilized," Velketh announced. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. 300 warships, 50,000 ground troops. They will reach Kreth-controlled space within 6 days. The chamber erupted. Some representatives cheered, believing salvation had arrived. Others wept, knowing that salvation came with a terrible price. Most simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what was happening. Counselor Morath raised his hand for quiet. When the noise finally died down, he spoke in his ancient, tired voice. We must be clear about what this means. The humans are not coming to save us. They are coming because they found a fight. There is a difference. What difference? Asked a young representative from the Vorathi mining colonies. They will destroy the Krith. Is that not what we wanted? Morath shook his head slowly. Let me tell you something about humans. Our archivists have studied them for 300 years. We have watched their history. We have analyzed their behavior. And we have learned one important truth. Humans do not know how to stop. He gestured, and the holographic display came to life. It showed a planet, green and blue, covered with markings that represented conflicts. This is Earth's history of war. Every red mark is a major conflict. Notice that there are no gaps. From the moment they developed civilization, humans have been fighting. Not because they are stupid, not because they are evil, but because something in their nature drives them to compete, to struggle, to overcome. The display changed, showing more detailed information. Numbers, statistics, casualty figures. In their recorded history, they have killed over 1 billion of their own kind in wars. 1 billion. And they kept going. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. And they still kept fighting. They fought over land. They fought over resources. They fought over ideas. They fought over pride. Morath turned to face the assembly, his old eyes filled with sorrow. Now ask yourself this question. If humans are willing to kill 1 billion of their own species in pursuit of victory, what will they do to species that are not their own? The chamber was silent. The hope that had briefly flickered in many eyes was dying. But they are fighting the Kreth, someone said weakly. They are fighting our enemy. Today, Morath replied. But what about tomorrow? What happens when the Kreth are gone and the humans look around at the rest of us? What happens when they decide that we are weak, that we cannot be trusted to protect ourselves, that we need to be managed for our own good? Ambassador Velketh stepped forward. Counselor Morath speaks the truth, but we cannot simply let the humans do whatever they want. We must communicate with them. We must try to establish boundaries. We must make them understand that the galaxy does not belong to them. And how do you propose we do that? Asked Representative Seelaren. She had been quiet throughout the meeting, watching and listening. They did not ask our permission to mobilize. They will not ask our permission to fight. What can we possibly say that will make them listen? Velketh took a deep breath. We send an envoy. We explain our concerns. We ask them, respectfully, to return home and let us handle the Kreth ourselves. Laughter broke out in parts of the chamber. Bitter, hopeless laughter. Handle the Kreth ourselves? Someone called out. We have lost half the galaxy. We have no army. We have no hope. What are we going to handle them with? Harsh language. Perhaps that is exactly the point, Seelaren said, standing up. Her voice was calm and clear. We tell the humans the truth. We tell them that we know what they are. We tell them that we are afraid of them. And we ask them, as one civilized species to another, to show mercy. The chamber fell quiet. You would beg? Velketh asked. I would ask, Seelaren replied. There is no shame in asking. There is no weakness in honesty. If the humans are truly as dangerous as we believe, then our only hope is to appeal to whatever compassion they might possess. Counselor Morath nodded slowly. The young diplomat speaks wisdom. Very well. Who will go? Seelaren straightened her shoulders. I suggested it. I will go. She departed within the hour, aboard a small diplomatic vessel. The journey took 4 days. When she dropped out of hyperspace, the human fleet was waiting. 300 ships hung in the darkness of space. They were not like Kreth warships, all black angles and aggressive spikes. They were simpler, cleaner, but there was something about them that made Seelaren's scales crawl. They looked like tools designed for a single purpose. Attention, unidentified vessel, a human voice said over the communication channel. This is the United Terran Navy. Identify yourself and state your business. I am Junior Diplomat Seelaren of the Solarian Conclave, representing the Galactic Council, she replied, keeping her voice steady. I request permission to speak with your commander. There was a pause. Then, permission granted. Dock at Bay 7 of the UTN Vengeance. Silaren's ship was guided into the massive flagship. She was escorted through corridors filled with human soldiers. They were smaller than she expected, with soft skin and no natural weapons, but they moved with a confidence that frightened her. They walked like predators. Admiral Vance met her in a simple meeting room. The human commander was older, with gray hair and lines on her face. She did not stand when Silaren entered. She simply gestured to a chair. Sit. Talk. Silaren sat. She had prepared a long speech, full of diplomatic language and careful phrases, but looking into Vance's hard eyes, she decided to abandon it. I am here to ask you to turn back, she said. The Galactic Council is grateful for your willingness to help, but we do not require your assistance. We will handle the Kreth ourselves. Vance's expression did not change. How? We will find a way. You have lost half the galaxy. Billions are dead. Billions more are enslaved. Your combined fleet has been destroyed. And you will find a way? Silaren felt her resolve weakening. We have survived crises before. Not like this. Vance leaned forward. Let me tell you what is happening right now. On Kreth slave worlds, families are being separated. Children are being taken from their parents and sent to labor camps. Elders are being executed because they are too old to work. This is happening right now, while we sit here talking. I know, Silaren whispered. We all know. Then you know why we are here. Silaren gathered her courage. Admiral, I must be honest with you. The Council is afraid. Not of the Kreth. Of you. We know what humans are. We have studied your history. We have seen what you do to your enemies. We have seen what you do to yourselves. She expected anger. Instead, Vance nodded slowly. You are right to be afraid. We are dangerous. We know this about ourselves. Then why? Silaren asked. Why are you coming to fight a war that does not involve you? Vance was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Softer, somehow. Do you have children, Ambassador? Silaren nodded. 2 daughters. What would you do if someone took them? If someone hurt them? If someone told you that you were not strong enough to protect them? I would do anything, Silaren said without hesitation. I would burn worlds to get them back. Vance smiled. It was a strange smile, both gentle and terrifying. Now you understand humans. We have seen the images from the Kreth slave worlds. We have seen the children in cages. We have seen the families torn apart. And something inside us cannot let that stand. She leaned back in her chair. You are right that we are dangerous. You are right that we do not know how to stop. But ask yourself this. If we are as dangerous as you say, what do you think we will do to anyone who enslaves children and burns families alive? Silaren had no answer. Go home, Ambassador, Vance said. Her voice was not cruel, but it was final. Tell your council to evacuate the war zones. Clear civilian populations from the battle areas. And stay out of our way. She stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned back one last time. We are not here to conquer the galaxy. We are here because someone needed help, and no one else was willing to give it. When the Kreth are gone, we will go home. You have my word. Silaren looked into her eyes, searching for any sign of deception. She found none. How can I trust that? Vance shrugged. You cannot, but you do not have a choice. So I suggest you hope that humans are better than you fear. She left, and Silaren was escorted back to her ship. As she flew away from the human fleet, she looked back at the 300 vessels that were about to change the galaxy forever. She did not know if she should feel hope or terror. Perhaps, she thought, both were appropriate. High Warlord Thexarn chose Velcara Prime for his final stand. It was a fortress world, the heart of Kreth military power. 3,000 warships gathered in orbit. 2 million soldiers waited on the ground. Every weapon, every resource, every soldier the Dominion could spare was brought to this single system. Thexarn stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, watching his fleet assemble. He had conquered half the galaxy. He had crushed armies that outnumbered him 10-1. He had never lost a war, but for the first time, he was afraid. The reports from Sol had changed everything. The humans had destroyed 15 warships in 17 minutes. They had boarded vessels and killed crews with their bare hands. They had laughed while dying. They are animals, General Krathos said, standing beside his warlord. Savage animals? No, Thexarn replied quietly. Animals can be understood. Animals can be predicted. These creatures are something else. He turned to face his general. But they can still die. They still bleed. And we have 3,000 ships. Whatever they are, they cannot overcome those numbers. The human fleet arrived 2 days later. 300 ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. By every calculation, by every standard of military strategy, they should have retreated. Instead, they attacked. Admiral Vance's voice echoed across the battle channel, reaching every ship in both fleets. All Terran vessels, this is Admiral Vance. Rules of engagement are simple. Destroy every enemy ship, board every station, rescue every prisoner. No retreat, no surrender. Show them what humanity is. The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups. They moved faster than Kreeth sensors could track, weaving through the massive formation, striking where the defenses were weakest. Their weapons were crude compared to Kreeth technology, simple kinetic projectiles and nuclear missiles. But they hit with devastating force. The Kreeth returned fire. Their energy beams sliced through human hulls. Their missiles found their targets. Human ships died by the dozen, but the humans did not stop. Ships with crippled engines kept fighting. Ships with breached hulls kept attacking. A human destroyer, its crew dead except for 3 survivors, rammed directly into a Kreeth carrier. The collision destroyed both vessels. Thexarn watched the battle unfold with growing horror. His fleet was winning by the numbers. They were destroying human ships at a rate of 3 to 1. But the humans did not care. They absorbed the losses and kept coming, each sacrifice opening holes in the Kreeth formation. They are insane, Krathos whispered. They are throwing away their lives. No, Thexarn said, understanding finally dawning. They are not throwing their lives away. They are spending them. There is a difference. The battle lasted 6 hours. By the end, the human fleet was reduced to 80 ships, but the Kreeth fleet was shattered. Over 2,000 warships destroyed, the survivors scattered, fleeing into hyperspace with tales of horror that would haunt them forever. Admiral Vance did not pursue the runners. She had a different target. All remaining vessels, she ordered, concentrate on the flagship. I want Thexarn alive. The Eternal Conquest was the largest warship in the galaxy. It had shields that could withstand bombardment for days. It had weapons that could crack planets. It had a crew of 50,000 soldiers, each ready to die for their warlord. The human Marines did not care. They came in boarding pods, small metal coffins that slammed into the hull and cut through the armor. Each pod carried 10 Marines. 200 pods hit the flagship in the first wave. Captain Sarah Chen led the assault team heading for the bridge. She was young, barely 30 years old, with short black hair and scars on her face from a dozen battles. She had lost her parents to a pirate raid when she was 12. She had joined the Navy at 16. She had been fighting ever since. The Kreeth soldiers met them in the corridors. They were bigger than humans, stronger, better armed. It did not matter. The Marines pushed through them with rifles and grenades and combat knives. When the rifles ran out of ammunition, they used pistols. When the pistols were empty, they used their fists. Chen fought through 6 decks of defenders. She watched her squad die one by one, each death making her angrier, colder, more determined. By the time she reached the bridge, she had 3 Marines left. Her armor was cracked, her visor was shattered. Blood dripped from a wound on her shoulder. The bridge doors exploded inward. Chen stepped through the smoke, her rifle raised. High Warlord Thexarn stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his personal guard. He was massive, twice the size of any human, covered in black scales that gleamed like armor. He held a ceremonial sword, the symbol of his power. So, he said, his voice deep and rumbling, the monsters of Earth have come for me. Chen's remaining Marines spread out, weapons trained on the guards. The tension in the room was thick enough to taste. High Warlord Thexarn, Chen said, her voice flat and tired. You are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. Your empire is finished. Your fleet is destroyed. Surrender now, and you will receive a trial. Thexarn laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. A trial? By whose authority? The Council? They are cowards who hide behind their treaties while the universe burns. They have no right to judge me. Not the council, Chen replied. Humanity. And what gives humanity the right? Chen lowered her rifle slightly. Her eyes were hard, but her voice was calm. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want tribute or slaves or power. We just want you to stop. Thexarn stared at her for a long moment. Then what do you want? We want you to understand, Chen said. What you did to those worlds, those families, those children. It ends today. And anyone who tries to do it again will face the same fate. She raised her rifle again. So what is it going to be, Warlord? Trial or death? Thexarn looked at his guards. They were loyal, but they were also terrified. The humans had already cut through thousands of Kreth soldiers to reach this room. A few more would make no difference. Slowly, he lowered his sword. I surrender. The broadcast went out to every Kreth world simultaneously. High Warlord Thexarn, in chains, reading a prepared statement. His voice was hollow, his eyes empty. The Dominion is defeated. I order all Kreth military forces to stand down immediately. All slaves are to be released. All occupied worlds are to be evacuated. The war is over. Behind him, Admiral Vance stood with her arms crossed. When Thexarn finished speaking, she stepped forward. To the people of the Kreth Dominion, your leader has been captured. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your empire has fallen. We are not here to conquer you. We are not here to enslave you. We are here because you enslaved others, and we cannot allow that. Her voice was hard, but not cruel. Go home. Rebuild your civilization. Learn to live in peace with your neighbors, and remember this day. Remember what happens when you hurt the innocent. Remember that somewhere in the galaxy, humans are watching. The broadcast ended. The war was over. In the council chamber, the assembled representatives watched the message in stunned silence. Sela Ren stood at the front of the Silarian delegation, tears streaming down her face. The humans had done what no one believed possible. They had broken the Kreth Dominion in a single battle. They had freed billions of slaves. They had ended a war that should have consumed the entire galaxy. And now they were going home. Admiral Vance appeared on the chamber's main display one final time. She looked tired but satisfied. Council members, she said. The Kreth Dominion no longer poses a threat. Their military is destroyed, their leadership is captured, and their slaves are being liberated as we speak. Terran forces will remain in the region for 6 months to assist with humanitarian efforts. Then we will withdraw to Sol. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. I know you are afraid of us. I understand why. Humanity is dangerous. We know this about ourselves. But I want you to understand something. Her eyes seemed to look at each representative individually. We are not here to rule the galaxy. We are not here to replace the Kreth as your conquerors. We came because someone was hurting people who could not defend themselves, and we do not tolerate that. She took a breath. The quarantine zone around Sol is over. We are joining the galactic community, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. We will trade with you. We will cooperate with you. We will protect you if you need protecting. But we will never bow to you, and we will never let anyone bow to us. Her expression softened, just slightly. Give us a chance. You might find that we are better than your fears. The transmission ended. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, Councillor Morath rose to his feet. I have lived for 2,000 years, he said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen species evolve and go extinct. I have seen wonders and horrors beyond counting. He turned to face the assembly, his old eyes bright with something that might have been hope, but I have never seen anything like this. A species that fights like demons but chooses to protect strangers. A species that could conquer the galaxy but chooses to go home. A species that terrifies us but asks only to be our neighbors. He shook his head slowly, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Perhaps we judged them too harshly. Perhaps we saw their capacity for violence and missed their capacity for mercy. Perhaps terror and hope can wear the same face. Sela Ren stepped forward. What do we do now? Morath looked at the holographic display, at the little blue planet that had sent its children across the stars to save people they had never met. We accept their offer, he said. We open trade. We establish embassies. We learn to live beside them. And we hope, pray, and trust that they meant what they said. He turned back to the assembly. The humans have shown us what they can do when they are angry. Now let us discover what they can do when they are at peace. The vote was unanimous. The quarantine was officially lifted. Earth was welcome in the galactic community. On the bridge of the UTN Vengeance, heading home, Admiral Vance received the news with a quiet nod. She looked out at the stars, at the vast universe that humanity was finally joining. Well, she said to no one in particular, that is a start. Behind her, the fleet sailed on through the darkness, carrying soldiers who had seen the worst of the universe and chosen to fight for the best of it. The galaxy would never forget what they had done, and humanity would never stop watching. Some called it a threat, others called it a promise. In the end, it was both.